Well, we're here today with Bill Villanova. Bill is in a very interesting world, and as we were chatting before time, I've had a little bit of insight into your world, Bill. You run one of the most famous, maybe the most famous funeral chapel in the country. I don't know what the rest of the world holds, but the Frankie Campbell Funeral Home on Madison Avenue has just been a landmark and an institution for since the late 1800s, I guess.
Yeah, established in 1898, obviously boasting over
You were
100.
just a young child at the time.
Yeah, exactly right. I aged very well, right? So over 125 plus years. And so the way that we see it now, Jim, is that we're just the conservators of this, iconic business and this legacy that was started back then.
It's amazing the number of changes and the evolution of rites and rituals around death and grieving and ceremony must be really when you look back since 1898, I bet there's a lot of things that have changed. I bet there's a lot of things that stayed the same.
Well, that's a great perspective. So, where we look at society itself, culture, right?
Mhm.
But everything that we do steeped in tradition and ritual. So there are folks that established, let's just say, they set precedent in their for their families years ago,
Mhm.
and we had this type of a service, we had this type of a burial at this cemetery,
Mhm.
and families prepared for that years ago, regardless of their religion. They had family plots,
Yep.
and everyone was expected. That generation and the next generation, they were all going to be together during this life
Life and the next, huh?
and in the next life. So, but we have seen changes.
'Cause it's in my lifetime, Bill. You're a couple of generations younger than me, but growing up in Port Chester as you did, in beautiful Westchester County, I grew up in Queens, and on the block I grew up on, most of the families were multi-generational. Was it still the case in Port Chester? There were a lot of multi-generational families when you grew up?
You're exactly right.
Yep.
So, my grandfather came here from Italy, so I was the
Port
third
Chester's got a
third
lot
gen
of good Italian stores.
good Italian stores. Really, one of the reasons that I went back to Portchester, Jim, was because Portchester represents the very fabric of our nation, and I believe that I was a good product of my community, and I wanted to make sure that I passed that on to my children as well. So when we look at these generations and how people have approached funeral service and rituals and all of that, we're seeing now that the younger generation, younger than me, they're going back to places of worship, and whether it be the temple or the
I
church.
I think you're right.
Yeah, that's a trend that's happening right now, and it's well documented.
I know, I don't have a lot of regrets about my family. I certainly don't regret who I married or the 3 kids we've been lucky enough to have, and more importantly, the 7 grandkids they've given us. But I don't think my wife and I did a good enough job of exposing them to religion, faith and religion. But it was more ritual-like.
Yeah.
So we were holiday Catholics, and, but I've noticed in my 3 kids now, them being much more deliberate about talking about faith and exposing their children to the rites and rituals around religion, and I'm very glad to see that, and I think you're right. I don't have any empirical data, but it seems to me, although just read an article in the last 2 weeks, right around Easter time, about how the Catholic Church has seen a resurgence of, new congregants, across the country, and that delighted me to see that people are exploring faith in a more serious way again.
We're seeing that now in funeral service, where people are making deliberate decisions that they will have a mass at this church, and that's part of their plan,
Yep.
advanced planning. And we see that um, as the generation grows, and the funeral director doesn't necessarily need to be the gatekeeper anymore for religion. So we would always try to understand what's best for this family and how can we connect them back to their faith. When a family comes to us already connected to their faith, kind of makes our job a little bit easier.
So let's get back to your beginnings, growing up there in Port Chester. How did you wind up in the funeral home business?
Great question. I actually like this one. So, as a young boy, my godfather had a funeral home, and I'd cut the grass, I
Yep.
would paint the stones on the
In
driveway
Port Chester?
in Portchester, and so I was exposed to funeral service early on.
Yep.
My dad died when I was 16, and so my teenage years, I was around the funeral home and my godfather, and so that was the direction that I had, and really an insight into a career that I wasn't considering. I thought
Yeah,
about
and, not a lot of kids sitting down there in grade school going, policeman, fireman, undertaker, not a lot of people checking that box.
You are correct.
So mostly comes through family exposure, I would guess.
I would say a lot of it comes through family exposure. There is a little bit of an uptick now in funeral service, but not as much as we would hope for funeral service.
Right.
We see people that are coming into becoming a funeral director, going to college for mortuary science as a
Yes.
second career.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Correct, and we also see
It's pretty AI proof.
it is AI proof. I agree with you, right? You're spot on with that because there is that interaction that you need to have. You have to be present
Yes.
for someone, and I would say that the opportunity is also there for everyone to go into funeral service. So you would think years ago. If you closed your eyes or watched a movie, what does that funeral director look like? Well, it was an older gentleman with gray hair
Yes.
and a dark suit. Now, 70% of the students that are going into funeral service are female.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so there's a change. So
Yes.
they're younger, and the demographic is changing.
Mm. And with, changing ethnicities, it's gotta keep you on your toes in terms of being sensitive to all the different needs that different, ethnic rituals and religions would suggest, huh?
Our approach is to, while we're talking to a client family, the most important thing is really to put the pen and pencil down and just to get an understanding of what's important for them
Yep.
and to meet them where they are.
It's
And
the
then
it's the ultimate service business.
it absolutely is. Well, think about, there's so many different professions and there are opportunities to um, complement what a family's needs are. And so if they just give us a little bit of insight into their family, of who their loved one was, their mother, their father, their child. And so we use our resources to create a memorable and a meaningful, a personal event for
Mhm.
them so they could not necessarily feel satisfied about the service, but they could be at peace
Yes.
and understand that they're supported not only by their community, but by their family, and they can begin the grieving process. Because it is there's a lot of burden that goes into the process if you haven't prepared. Everything's happening very fast, and you're walking into a funeral home that you may be familiar with. There may
Yep.
be in the neighborhood, could be in Queens, right?
Yep.
But you're going in there, and usually the person that you're sitting across from is a stranger.
So you're exposed to the industry because your, godfather had a local funeral home. Then what was your career path?
Career path is, I saw that I was kind of growing a little bit faster than my hometown. I was able to move on and manage two funeral homes in Mamaroneck
So what
for
was your
12 years.
first job in the industry after your after mowing the lawn?
After mowing the lawn, I went to school, got my degree in mortuary science.
And
So
where do you go for that?
in New York City, American Academy McAllister,
Uh-huh.
and it's probably the most well-known schools. There used to be 2 schools years ago. One was American Academy, and the
Yeah.
other was the McAllister Institute. They combined them over the years,
Mhm.
and so that's where I went, and a lot of my colleagues went there as well.
And what was your first job out of school?
Was working for my godfather as a funeral director,
Uh-huh.
and so I found it was a great, it was very rewarding, and it was a great connection to my community. Truth is, when I left Portchester to move on and start to follow a career path that I thought was best for me, it was enjoyable. For 12 years, I managed a couple funeral homes in Mamaroneck,
Uh-huh.
and then I made a change in 2007, and I came to Service Corporation International,
Mhm.
and so I've been with them now since 2007.
And what'd you do with them? 2007, what did you work with, SEI?
Yeah, 2007. I started in Connecticut. I was there for about a year, and then I started a management path, and I managed a funeral home in Rockland County, and then that grew, and before you knew it, was managing 4 funeral homes in 3 different counties, and I had great success,
Mhm.
and, I came to, Frankie Campbell, the funeral chapel in 2018, and the truth is I didn't realize really what that meant. We all knew, as a funeral director, you know
It
Frankie
it
Campbell.
it is the big brand, isn't it?
It is. It's significant. It's a huge responsibility. But I was very glad to take the reins.
It's like flying the F-35, you
Yeah,
know?
you're right,
Yeah.
and worth every penny. Exciting to be here in New York City and to be with Frankie Campbell, and we were able to complete a $20 million renovation. So the building itself is 24,000 square feet,
Wow.
and we reimagined 18,000 square foot of the building. Most of all of that was all forward facing, and as you can imagine, all the mechanicals that go into that behind the
Sure.
scenes and all of it.
I've delivered many a funeral arrangement there.
Yeah, that's right. You were on the Upper East Side. It's
Yeah, we delivered there often, and, unfortunately, I've been there a lot as a visitor, but it's a beautiful place, and it's most known for its celebrity work, which means there's gotta be a lot of, uh, attention to, discretion in your industry always, but then when you have media personalities, as your customers, it's gotta put an extra burden on confidentiality.
Yeah, we we're pretty locked down pretty tight every day.
Yeah.
So there may be people that are notable, maybe a titan in a certain industry, maybe not notable to everyone, but in certain circles. So we're aware of operating in that atmosphere.
So what do you do to keep the paparazzi out?
Yeah. Well, we're always well. Here's an example. The building itself lends itself to security,
Yep.
right? You've seen
Beautiful
our
brick building.
correct, right? So you've seen our building, and you can tell the entrances security is very tight. When we need to increase that level of care and attention, we can bring in private security as well. But then it's only as good, that security and all that effort is only as good as the people that are answering the phone. So we have to be even more diligent because people will call and say, I have a delivery for whatever family.
Mm.
And we have to say, we're not handling those services. Oh, come on, we know you're handling those services. But uh, we're very uh, we're very aware, and it just comes down to the
So
ability
that
to
brings
be
me
there.
to the special nature of training your staff. It's a different world, and the level of, sensitivity your team members have to have, at the same time, precision. It's a different kinda training regimen. Tell us about how you go about finding your people and training them in a very peculiar, as in different than most places, sense of responsibilities.
The approach that we have and training, role playing, working through tabletop exercises, debriefing after services, we all learn from all of that and to take the opportunity to learn from everything that we're doing. But having an opportunity to review data and to share that as a team and walk everyone through the expectation. So if one person's job is to drive that vehicle and stay by the vehicle, until we tell you otherwise. Same thing with the person that's standing at the door. There is protocol
Yeah.
that's involved as well. So we focus on the immediate members of the family, and then maybe there's some honored guests.
Mm.
Maybe a parallel, we're also working with multiple law enforcement agencies. And so we need to take into consideration maybe the family's private security. And then we have a notable figure that's coming in with Capitol
With their
Police.
own security, yeah.
Yeah, and, I have to say that the NYPD, they do a magnificent job. To close to our hearts is the 19th precinct.
Yep.
They're in the neighborhood. They help us out quite often if they have to bring barricades, and they help us with paparazzi, as you mentioned,
Yep.
and really just, people that are seeking to get a photo, and we're always aware of that as well. So for our profession, years ago, you needed to get out a camera and you need to be ready to take that
Not
photo,
anymore.
right? Now
Pretty
everyone
soon it'll just be your glasses.
you are correct, and they have that now. So that camera is always ready to go in your phone. So we know that when we're walking out of Frankie Campbell on Madison Avenue and we're bringing the casket, our pallbearers are shouldering the casket to the hearse, everyone can see that at any time. They take out a phone. So we're always aware how important that is for the client family, but really for funeral service in general, because we want to represent funeral service on the highest level, and it's good for the community.
Tell me something that you are nuts about that families probably don't even notice.
It's definitely what that first memory picture is like for client family when they're coming into the funeral home.
Mhm.
Uh, I wanna make sure that everything is balanced and parallel, that all the chairs are lined up and that the flowers, are perfectly matched and the lighting is good. So, really, it's that overall first experience, and then I would say it's how we're moving from the funeral home with the family and the procession. So it's really all of that detail that you can say that I'm nuts about. But it's definitely what I am focused on because for me, I have the opportunity to conduct funerals, and my team has the opportunity to conduct funerals every week. But for that family, it's that one time. And maybe they experience that in their family, maybe 2, 3, or 4 times in their lifetime. But for them, it's new, it's fresh, and we need to take care of that family.
Treat your sweetheart this Valentine's to gourmet gifts from Harry and David. Dazzle them with premium wines, rich chocolates, dreamy desserts, and all the tasty goodies they love most.
We'll talk a lot about rituals and how they're evolving and changing. So much of what you've already mentioned implies ritual. How has music changed? Music tells us how to feel. As the role of music in the chapel, at the funeral service, graveside, uh, while people are just visiting, has that role changed? And have you been surprised at musical choices?
Well, I'm smiling as you're talking about that. So one of the aspects of our renovation that was so very important to us was our audio visual throughout the building. And so to have that ambient music, and that could represent anything. It could be, Led Zeppelin and Rush, all the way, to maybe Taylor Swift now and everything in between. Um, Client families like to have that because that's part of their life. We listen to music or podcasts when we're driving, but we have an opportunity to make the experience a little bit better for a family. We're also we're very, very honored. We're honored to have, our music director, he's from Broadway. His name is Christoph, and whenever a client family wants live music, we reach out to him, and he has brought in, quartets or just a violinist. We've had full complement of an orchestra.
I told my wife I want a big old Sunday church rocking choir.
Why not? We can get that, absolutely, but that music really is so powerful, and even if we're being, very traditional, you go to a Catholic mass, you have the processional, the recessional, offertory, communion,
Yeah,
and all of those songs, these hymns and psalms, they're meaningful,
sure.
right? And if
And
we're
they certainly do stir emotion.
they do, and if you imagine, right, so we can bring everyone to a moment in time, at
That
the end of
first note of a bagpipe, you got me.
absolutely, or leaving the church, and the pallbearers place the casket on the shoulder, and you hear eagle's wings,
Yeah.
right? He will raise you up on eagle's wings, and it's meaningful, and it's a powerful message, so music is very important.
And I'm not surprised that the AV components changed, because in my lifetime, people started bringing family photos to the service, and now I'm sure they want a video display and a rotation and live, having videos on a reel and photos, and that's got to be a big part of the service now.
Yeah, you're right. Years ago, it would just be still photos.
Pasted on a board, maybe.
Yeah, and we used to we knew that that really wasn't the best opportunity there because your family members they would give it to maybe a grandchild or a nephew, and they had that little
Pin, yeah.
stick them or whatever, and they would put all these photos together, but you couldn't get them apart at the end.
Yep,
So you
yep.
had this permanent board, and where were you going to put it? So now we have the opportunity to
Digitized.
digitize all the photos. We can make it a moving reel.
Yep.
We actually have production teams that will actually enhance the photos, could create I'm going to say a studio quality product.
Uh-huh.
And then some families will do live streaming for family members and friends
Oh,
that are
sure, sure, I
unable
wouldn't have thought of that.
to come to the service itself. And then there is the opportunity to actually have the service recorded for family members as well.
How did COVID impact your business?
So COVID really it impacted our business, but it really impacted the community. What we missed and what we saw that hurt, and I say hurt families the most, was the lack of touch, Jim. We when I met you earlier, we shook your hand, right? There's an embrace, and we when we're sad or when we're happy, it's an embrace, and people were told not to embrace each other. And so even for family members, how do you not support someone who's hurting? So that was one component I think that
Has there been lasting change as a result of COVID?
I think people wanted to come back. Well, they wanted to come back tenfold.
Boomerang, yeah.
And I believe that that's kind of where we are right now, where
Mhm.
people do want to be together and to celebrate someone's life.
We did have a lot of adjournment during COVID where they said, "Well, no need to rush. We'll wait till Uncle Charlie can get into town," stuff like that. Has the period of time from the death to your services, uh, been elongated in any way?
Not for any other reason other than one thing that I do share with all of our client families is that, uh, you know, we're on your schedule. So let's take our time.
Mhm.
I've had many families say to me, I'm glad we took our time and planned everything well and had a beautiful service.
Yep.
I've never had a family say to me, I'm glad we rushed.
Yeah.
Right, and so to rush anything,
Yep.
really, in my opinion, doesn't give you the best product, right? And in this sense, it's that memory of the family coming together. So just getting back to COVID, it took away a little bit of community and of family, and when
They
we
missed all those rituals of this, that have evolved that help us to come to grips with it, cope with it, and package it in some way. You never get over it, but to cope with it and make it less negative and more positive place in your life. When you didn't have those rituals, you know, when do we have end? When do we have closure?
You're right, and, I'm gonna mention one ritual that happened that came out of COVID, and I thought it was kind of beautiful at the time. So around I don't know if you remember in New York City around 7:30 at night,
Yes.
right? The windows would open and people would bang pots and pans, just it was a sign of unity
Yep.
that we were together and sense of community, and we were behind everyone in healthcare and fire department, police department, EMS, and then eventually they brought funeral service into that, so we were honored. But that kinda went away, and it's just we were so unified. We were galvanized after 9/11. We were galvanized during COVID, but then it disappears. So I would say it's up to so many people, yourself and myself and everybody who's listening to the podcast, is that focus on community and focus on being with family and friends so people can experience and participate in a positive, environment.
You have a stellar brand in Frank E. Campbell. You have your personal brand. How do you think about your role in community, about being an influencer in your community as a business?
I take that very serious. I attend a lot of events and, do what I can to support different organizations, in philanthropy. One thing that we started to do is to bring back what Frankie Campbell did is supporting culture, music, and the arts. So several times throughout the year, we have concerts at the funeral home. We'll do art shows, and we've even had a comedy evening. We've had book launches. So we have community events that happen there. They're all free, and it's the concerts. The musicians are they're professional, world class musicians. the authors that are launching books, great authors. And so we're excited to give back. So part of that is connecting with the community, and then attending certain events, throughout New York City and beyond is exciting.
Each state has its own restrictions around, rules around what, funeral homes can do. In some states, funeral homes have gotten into catering. I remember growing up in my neighborhood in South Queens, the local funeral director, would endear themselves to the community by lending out chairs. So if you were going to be having a graduation at the house and you needed some folding chairs, you could go borrow them from Leo F. Kearns Funeral Home. And, as the business evolves now, within your parent organization, I'm sure is a breadth of services that funeral homes provide that you don't get into here in New York.
Well, we actually do, but I'm gonna go take one quick step back because you just brought a big memory back to me. So I was 16 years old,
Uh-huh.
working for my
This is 10 years ago.
this is 10 years ago, working for my godfather, and I remember packing up the chairs in the canvas bags and driving them to families' homes for graduations.
Sure.
So that is very real and something that I participated in. So I'm also, I can say that, rules and regulations that govern funeral service, some of them are very antiquated. And up until January 2017, funeral homes in New York State were unable to provide food and beverage for client families. That changed that January.
Yes.
Yeah. And so now we have the opportunity to provide light refreshments, a light catered event for client family, whether it be during a visitation or after a service. We have that opportunity there, and part of the renovations that we completed incorporated a rooftop terrace. So you have a beautiful rooftop terrace overlooking Madison and 81st. It's beautiful. Please come by and visit. And we have a fourth floor lounge, and we have a formal dining room on the third floor.
Wow.
So we do support that. It doesn't take away, and it doesn't take the place of a restaurant.
No.
But it is, when you think of all 50 states, some states allow food in the funeral home without any restrictions at all.
Massachusetts?
Yeah, exactly right. Some of them have complete kitchens in the funeral homes. That's not what we have, but I think it's a step in the right direction just to support the service.
I'm interested in how it impacts your business, what the current trends are. I know Canada was way ahead of the US in terms of percentage of deaths that resulted in cremation. Where are we now, and what's the trend in the
I'd,
US?
yeah, I'd say that cremation still is on the rise, right? But we view cremation, and we share our support for cremation as a means of disposition. So it doesn't preclude a family from having a funeral service, a memorial service, or any type of a service, celebration of life. It just means that instead of going to the cemetery and having a burial or an entombment,
Yep.
that you will have a cremation.
That makes sense. What percentage of deaths now result in cremation?
It just depends on where you are. You
California, a lot more than here.
West Coast has always been higher.
Yep,
And I guess it has to do with, also, it's not as traditional as the East
that's
Coast.
right.
And so what we see here is somewhere about 50%.
50,
Yeah.
okay. That's quite a move in the last 20 years.
Yeah, definitely. But we've seen a large increase in the population. So when you introduce the population density, you introducing different rituals and different cultures. So some folks may want cremation as a cultural.
I heard something a few weeks ago you might know about. I was chatting with some friends in Florida, and they were saying they had moved from New York, and they got audited, to see whether or not their residence was still in New York, and they found out that they owned a family cemetery plot on Long Island, and the auditor said, "That indicates your intent to return." So
Mm.
so they nabbed him for New York State residency.
Never heard that one, but I'm glad I got it today. This is a good one. I'm gonna have to
Well,
pass that on.
I was asking you to see if there was any reality to that.
Well, there very well could be reality
Yeah,
to it. You talk about a nuance.
yeah. Yeah, I plan on returning, but not
Yeah.
upright, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
Uh, I remember one time, this is a long time, well before you were Frank E. Campbell Funeral Home, Les Paul,
Mhm.
the famous guitarist, died, and he designed the guitar that Gibson Guitars manufactures, very popular guitar. And Gibson Guitars sent one of their they had 3 or 4 or 5 touring buses that were full decked out as Gibson's touring buses. They lent them out to bands and different events, and it was a great public relations, tool for Gibson. And I remember when Les Paul was waked at Frankie Campbell Funeral Home, that bus was parked outside on Madison Avenue the whole time of the, funeral services.
I've seen the photos.
Have you? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've read the articles. So there's, Slash, the guitarist, was out front with the bus,
Yeah.
and, so that's, but again, you think about the what we do today. So someone may have been a collector of antique cars. The car would be
Yep.
outside. So that's what we're always, maybe the person was a motorcycle enthusiast, to share, uh someone's desires or someone's habits or hobbies,
Okay.
and to bring
Alright.
that
So
together. Yes.
tell us, Bill, one that one that really surprised you. I'll tell you mine is a florist.
Go ahead.
So we had a shop in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, Italian family. We bought it from, partnered with, they worked with us for decades after we got involved in their business. But they had a very successful sympathy business, and they had a fellow who wanted him to make a floral piece in the shape of a garbage truck with a family name on the garbage truck and a picture of, Grandpa Ben in the window with a cigar. So,
So
one of the more interesting requests you've gotten.
yeah, so we've experienced, some. I'll share one with you. We had, our chapel was turned into like a nightclub. And so the environment changed. It was lighting, uplighting. It was pipe and drape. It was a 20-foot wall of roses.
Wow.
We've had really just gorgeous, very tasteful off-site events that were able to take large-scale facilities and make it meaningful, and to multimedia and live music and performers, and it could be, anyone can have that,
Yeah,
right? So you don't need to be notable, you don't need to have fame and notoriety, whatever you want,
yeah.
it could be had.
So that begs the question, and the area that I know you in particular personally and professionally are focused on, which is, helping individuals, but more importantly, families plan for the end. It's the only thing we're all certain about right now. That could be changing,
Yeah.
but that's been a big focus of your attention, is to work with people on, "Let's not leave this to chance. Why don't you let's sit down and plan what your end of life rituals will be."
Yeah, Jim, so and thank you for asking that and bringing that up. That is probably the most, important question that and discussion that we have now. When we think about our lives and what we do and what we plan where we go to school, who we marry, where we live, where we go on vacation. We plan to have this podcast today. Why wouldn't we plan for our own funeral?
Mhm.
Why would we leave it to chance, or why would we put that burden or that responsibility on a family member when we have the opportunity to take care of it ourselves now? So
Why are we all so reluctant to talk about it?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's because people fear death, or
If we don't talk about it, it's not gonna happen?
yeah. But just as you said, it's going to happen,
Yes.
and it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be the macabre.
Yes.
It could be. It could start with a very simple conversation.
Music.
Music. What do you want played at your funeral?
Yeah.
Where do you want your funeral service? Where do you wanna be? What do we do, and what is our
If
plan?
you could plan it now, what would it look like? Those
Exactly,
kinds of questions, huh?
exactly. That is the question,
Yeah.
and you start with that, and you put that all together.
When people do that, Bill, do you sense that they come to a better sense of peace?
I think maybe that's at peace, yes, but also maybe that's a
Just
time.
talking about it.
Correct. Maybe that's also a time in their life where they can start living.
Hmm.
right? I've made that decision. I know exactly what's going to happen. That burden is over. I
Yep.
have it aside. Someone say, and then when I'll tell you this too, I have had so many family members after we've had the funeral or we're discussing the funeral service for their loved one that has an advanced plan in place. So many have said, I'm so glad mom took care of this. We didn't have to worry about anything.
Mhm.
It was peace of mind. But that's a
Last
bonus.
question.
Yeah.
You got a clean piece of paper in front of you. If you could re-engineer the funeral service industry, what's on your list of things you'd like to put on that new architecture?
There was a time in funeral service. There was a time in communities where the funeral director went from being um, the stakeholder, the pillar of the community, and then was maybe uh, reduced a little bit in stature. And I would hope to create an environment where that funeral director, that funeral home, is galvanized, is fortified in that community, in every community, and that everyone in the community sees the value of a funeral service,
Mhm,
the value of people coming together to celebrate someone's life.
mhm.
So that's something that I would want to have engineered. I also believe that years ago, when we saw the increase or the advent of cremation, uh, I would think that there were opportunities where we could have embraced cremation better.
Yep.
People see cremation now as a means of disposition
Mhm.
only, and nothing else, not having a funeral service
Yep.
or a visitation. So I would want to go and, if I had to engineer that,
Mhm,
just add it to the list. Entombment, burial, cremation,
mhm.
and keep it there, right? I would also like to ensure that um, families understood the importance of planning, and because we're kind of late to the conversation now. Yeah.
So, family in the New York area wants to get together with, Bill Villanova, one of the talented people on his staff at Frankie Campbell Funeral Home on 81st and Madison. How did he get in touch with you?
Best way is a quick phone call, 212-288-3500,
Mhm,
or we can go to our website, which is frankiecampbell.com. And from there, you can contact us virtually. You also have the opportunity to do a 360-degree tour through the entire building.
mhm.
So you can kind of connect with us a little bit that way as well.
See what that $20 million in renovation bought, huh?
Exactly.
Bill Villanova, thanks so much.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate being
Thanks for
with you.
sharing your knowledge. I think all of us would like to know someone like you, and have done our planning with you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.